Voting, so we should be on in about just about 30 seconds. We're live. Voting, so we should be on in about just about 30 seconds. We're live.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Ronnie Hopkins, Chairman of the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning Board. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, members of the board, our staff, and members of the public. It is now 10 a.m., and I call this meeting to order. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom and being live streamed on YouTube for the viewing public. Mr. Du Bois, will you please call the roll?
Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning Board of Directors, Dr. Ronnie Hopkins, Chairman, President of Voorhees University.
Present.
Dr. Edward Hill, Chief Academic Officer.
Here.
V. Diana Berry, Chief Financial Officer.
Present.
Dr. Gwenda Green, Public Member.
Present.
Dr. Demira Hightower Mitchell, Public Member.
Present.
Dr. Thelma Sojourner, Public Member.
Present.
Staff Advisor, Dr. Wendy Stevenson, Founding Executive Director of VU Charter Institute of Learning.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Du Bois. We do have a quorum, ladies and gentlemen. And for the record, this meeting was publicly noticed in accordance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Before we begin our invocation, I want to take time to honor Dr. William Bill Henry Whitaker Jr. Dr. Whitaker served as Dean of the Dr. Emily England Clyburn Honors College at South Carolina State University, and it served as an inaugural member of the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning. He served as a faculty administrator at Kentucky State University, Benedict College, Livingston College, and a consultant for Voorhees University. He was a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University, Michigan State University, where we met 37 years ago, and the University of Kentucky. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and dedicated member of Latson Presbyterian Church in Columbia, South Carolina. Dr. Whitaker will certainly be missed by students, colleagues, friends, and family. At this time, may we have a moment of silence to honor the life well lived of Dr. William Bill Whitaker Jr. Amen. And to God be the glory. For our invocation, if you'll present yourself in a posture for prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather as leaders and educators committed to expanding hope and opportunity through the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning. Grant us wisdom in our deliberations, unity in our purpose, and courage to make decisions that will positively impact the lives of students and families across our state. Bless this meeting and all who are present. Amen.
Amen.
The mission of the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning is to authorize and support high-quality charter schools advancing equity and student success. Our vision is to build a national model of HBCU-based authorizing grounded in excellence, innovation, and integrity. So before we adopt the agenda for today's public meeting, I will begin with the chair's opening remarks. So good morning again to everyone and welcome. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge that tomorrow, June 19th, is Juneteenth, our nation's newest federal holiday. Juneteenth commemorates the day in 1865 when news of emancipation finally reached enslaved people in Texas, marking an important milestone in our country's ongoing journey towards freedom and equality. As an historically Black university committed to education, access, and the development of future generations, it is befitting that we take a moment to recognize the significance of this day, pay homage to those who came before us, and reflect on the progress that has been made, as well as the work that remains before us. In many ways, the work of the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning is part of that ongoing journey. Through the schools we authorize and support, we're helping to develop future generations of leaders, educators, innovators, and citizens who will help build stronger communities and a stronger society. As we move into the summer season, many people naturally think about rest, renewal, family gatherings, and a time with loved ones. While those things are certainly important, summer is also a time and a season for preparation. Much of the work that determines success in the coming year happens long before students arrive on the first day of school. That is especially true in the charter school sector. While school openings and major decisions often receive the most attention, the less visible work of the planning, preparation, and compliance and capacity building is equally important. Strong schools and strong authorizers are built through careful attention to those foundational responsibilities. Today's agenda reflects that reality. We will receive updates on the Institute's current priorities and key actions, and we will spend time discussing pre-opening conditions and LEA Year Zero responsibilities. These are important conversations that help ensure that schools are prepared to serve students effectively and that the Institute continues to fulfill its responsibilities as a high-quality authorizer. As we continue building the work of the Institute, I remain grateful for the commitment, expertise, and partnership of our board members, staff, university leadership, and stakeholders. The progress we make today may not always be visible to the public, but it contributes directly to our ability to support high-quality schools and create better opportunities for students and family across South Carolina. Thank you all for your continued dedication to this work. I look forward to today's discussion. With that, we will proceed with the agenda. We will now, ladies and gentlemen, begin our formal meeting. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to approve the June 18th, 2026 board meeting agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So the motion was made by Dr. Sojourner, seconded by Provost Hill. What say you, Dr. Green?
Approved.
What say you, Dr. Hightower Mitchell?
Approved.
Dr. Sojourner?
I approve.
Dr. Hill?
Approved.
Vice President O'Berry?
Approved.
The motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of our last public meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 21st, 2026 public meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the May 21st, 2026 public meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Green, seconded by Dr. Sojourner. What say you, Dr. Green?
Approved.
What say you, Dr. Hightower Mitchell?
Approved.
Dr. Sojourner?
I approve.
Dr. Hill?
Approved.
Vice President O'Berry?
Approved.
The motion passes. Thank you. At the beginning of every board meeting, the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning hears public testimony related to its items on the agenda and listens to testimony for topics not related to any agenda items. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. We ask that commenters remain respectful and keep their remarks limited to time allotted. There is no one who has signed up to give public comment. This concludes that public comment portion of the agenda. Next on the agenda, the very, very exciting part of this meeting is the executive director's report. I will yield the floor to the Voorhees University Charter Institute of Learning staff. beginning with Dr. Wendy Stevenson and Mr. Elliott Smalley.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Please give me a
Morning.
second to share my screen. And everyone see the screen, Executives Directors Report.
Yes, it's populated.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hopkins, and good morning again to everyone. It is so good to be back with this board. Since we last met on May 21st, the Institute has stayed in steady motion. This report walks us through where we stand on CR Neal, the charter contract, our governance work, the new state law, and the infrastructure we're building behind all of it. And then Mr. Smalley and Mr. Walling will take you deeper into our pre-opening conditions and LEA year zero work. Here's the shape of today's report. 5 areas have moved since CR Neal's pre-opening work is advancing on the ground. The charter contract has cleared staff review. We've strengthened our governance bench. The Charter Accountability Bill became law, and our LEA infrastructure, the back-end systems that let Voorhees serves as the schools district is taking form. I'll keep my portion at the level you need for insight and the level of operational detail to the team, Mr. Walling and Mr. Smalley. Let me start with CR Neal because this is where the work becomes real. First, the school now has its official state identification number from the Department of Education. That may sound procedural, but it's the school's identity in every state system from here forward. Funding, reporting, all of it. That's their identification. Second, we were on the ground at the Atlas Road property in Columbia. Very exciting time. We were there alongside the Office of School Facilities, the Department of Transportation, and the construction team, along with their executive director. Also, the chair was there, working through site planning and acquisition. Third, Voorhees now has confirmed access to the state facilities portal, and we've scheduled a walkthrough with CR Neal and OSF very soon. And we've set an in-person pre-opening kickoff for July 16 here at Voorhees University. Details to come. On the charter contract, staff review is complete. The document is now advancing through final review, including legal counsel, and we're working toward execution early July. Alongside the contract, we're developing the conditions framework that governs what the school must demonstrate before it opens, and the performance framework that will anchor accountability once it opens and is operating. Our priority here is alignment, keeping the contract, the policy slate, the conditions, and the performance framework consistent as each one lands. Our governance and board readiness. On governance, I'm glad to report that Dr. Kelly Peterson has joined us as board governance consultant. This effort is supported through UNCF. That's a real strengthening for our governance capacity, and the work is already underway. Be sure to look out for details forthcoming. Our governance package policy is beginning its development. It isn't on today's agenda, but it is advancing, and we've begun turning our previously adopted policies into day-to-day procedures and templates staff will actually use. Now the Legislative Act 123. Here's the update. Now the legislative landscape, and this one matters. The Charter Authorizer Accountability Bill that we've been tracking as Senate Bill 454 It is now law. Act 123. We've completed our analysis of what it requires across authorizer governance, school oversight, and public transparency. And we're crosswalking our own practices against it to catch anything we need to submit or build. We're also following up with the department on opportunities for Voorhees stakeholder input. My read for the board: our current build-out priorities position us well to meet these requirements as the implementation guidance develops. This is the law we're ready to work with. This is something that we're not scrambling to catch up to. I'll be brief here because Mr. Smalley and Mr. Walling will go deeper on this in just a moment. We've established a monthly coordination meeting with the department, completed our portal registration, drafted the LEA support structure across the core functions, and developed our first year zero cost estimates. The headline is simple: the back end is moving in parallel with the school's readiness, not after it. So we are aligned. Looking ahead over the next several weeks, we plan to execute the charter contract early July, host the July 16th kickoff, bring the pre-opening framework to you for review, sharpen our application cycle strategy toward the November 1 letter of intent deadline, and that will be here before you know it, and track the state's higher education authorizer registration for the 2027 window. I want to be candid about what we're watching. We are executing a high quality contract on the early July timeline. The facilities development and readiness milestones. We're keeping all of our framework documents aligned and implementing Act 123 well. None of these are red flags at all today. They're the things that, if they slip, would matter, but we are keeping them visible to you. In closing, where I always do, the Institute remains the only active HBCU charter school authorizer in the country, and we are building it with rigor this work deserves. Thank you. Thank you all for your continued trust and partnership. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Smalley and Mr. Walling, who will walk you through our pre-opening conditions and the LEA Year Zero responsibilities that support them.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Stevenson, and good morning, President Hopkins and members of the board. Excited to be here and talk about the next exciting phase of authorizing. So you've got a school now, and we're about to step into a really critical time, which we call the ready to open period. It can be called a bunch of different things, but really this next year is a critical step in your oversight and partnership with schools as an authorizer. And so just to set some foundation here at the ground level, ready to open, or can be also known as year zero, the planning year, pre-opening. There's a lot of different terms for it, but really we're talking about the year before a school opens. So between approval of an application and that school actually opening its doors for kids, there's a lot of things that happen in between. And ready to open really refers to the quality systems and practices that prepare a school to open. And so we're going to go through some of exactly what that is and what that's going to look like for CR Neal and for you as a board. But we really think about this as the bridge between approval and the operational years. And this is the start of the ongoing oversight and monitoring that this board will do to ensure that approved schools are delivering on their mission and become high quality options for students. And so just to also kind of frame this in some of the research that backs it up, this is a quote from a a research study out of Stanford at the Center for Research and Educational Outcomes. And I just wanted to note sort of broadly the importance of Ready to Open and why this year is really critical to school success and to school startup. And they said that for the majority of failing schools, poor first-year performance will give way to poor second-year performance. And once this has happened, the future is predictable and extremely bleak. For the students enrolled in these schools, this is a tragedy that must not be dismissed. And so, in summary, it's really, really hard to turn around schools that get off to a poor start. And so that's why Ready to Open and the criteria that we set and the expectations that we set even before a school opens its doors is really critical to a school getting off the ground in a really positive way and being successful for students. If it doesn't start that way, it's really, really difficult to turn those schools around. And so your role as an authorizer and the oversight that you're going to provide over the next 12 months is really critical to setting the school and students up for success. And so what actually happens during the Ready to Open year? Dr. Stevenson mentioned some of this already. And just to double down on some of those things, we're going to execute a contract with an approved school. So we're going to execute the contract with C.R. Neal. That's going to outline all the conditions, all the performance expectations, everything that the school is going to be held accountable to legally, their obligations under state law, authorizer policy, federal law. Everything will be outlined in that contract that you'll be able to oversee and hold the school accountable to once the term begins. They're also going to be held accountable to Ready to Open criteria. So we've established several milestones that are going to be tracked throughout this year. Everything from establishing board systems to financial systems, setting up student enrollment information systems, securing the facility, staff recruitment, staff hiring. There are benchmarks and milestones along the way, and several indicators that are included within that Ready to Open checklist. You'll be getting and seeing sort of the full list of what that is. It's too much for me to say everything here today. But we'll be tracking that and we'll be working with the school, and those updates will come to the board throughout the course of the next year. And so you'll be beginning your monitoring and oversight of their completion and the school's progress towards meeting those milestones. And what that means for C.R. Neal is, as Dr. Stevenson mentioned, executing the charter contract and kicking off this pre-opening year in July. We'll have a formal sort of sit down with the school. We'll do a deep dive into the milestones, expectations, monitoring what it's going to look like for them, what the cadence will be, and how we're going to raise those benchmarks to the board, and then move through the next year by implementing and doing ongoing monthly monitoring and reviews of that to then bring updates to the board throughout the next year. And ultimately, all those schools' responsibilities that are outlined and documented will be brought to the board periodically for the board to then ultimately make a readiness determination. And so we'll talk more about that, what that is, and it will be a much bigger part of the conversation as we get towards next spring. But this board's responsibility is going to be taking in all of that monitoring evidence, the documentation that's submitted, evidence that the school is meeting or not meeting certain milestones and benchmarks. And this board's responsibility coming into the spring of next year and moving into the summer will be to make a determination of whether the school is ready to open or not. Have they sufficiently met the milestones in the pre-opening checklist and the rest of the Ready to Open framework? That means they are ready to open their doors and serve students. So that could mean clearing the school to open. It could mean adding additional conditions that the school must meet. It could mean that the school ultimately delays and needs more time to open. There's a lot of different ways that that decision can go, but this board will make that ultimate determination. And so what we will raise up to the board over the course of the next year is not only the school's progress on how they're meeting each of these milestones and benchmarks, but also identifying areas of higher priority or higher risk, right? We know that facilities have been a major obstacle for schools in the last year. And so without a certificate of occupancy, you can't use a building, right? So there are certain things that will rise to the level of like this school cannot legally open without certain things in place. Enrollment is another big thing that we'll be tracking over the course of the next year, again, to mitigate risk because of the impact enrollment or particularly low enrollment can have on finance and the operations and the ability to sustain a school in a financially viable way. So those are the things that we will raise up in terms of greater or lesser risk, but you will get a full window into the progress that the school is making to feel comfortable ultimately making a decision and a determination of readiness for that school when the time comes. And then to touch briefly on kind of what this means moving forward, this is a graphic that I've shown some of these board members before. It was probably a couple years ago, so you may not remember it. But now we are really moving into this ongoing oversight. And what NACSA considers a quality authorizer in its principles and standards is one that conducts contract oversight that competently evaluates performance and monitors compliance, ensuring schools' legally entitled autonomy, protecting student rights, informing interventions, and then ultimately coming to decisions for renewal or revocation and providing that information to the public. And what this chart shows you, I'm not going to go through every piece of this, is this cycle of monitoring and oversight that we are moving into. And so we are starting in this contracting phase, kicking off the ready to open process and year with an approved school. And that will then move us into ongoing oversight. Annually, you will be assessing a school against the performance expectations that are outlined in the performance framework, which we'll talk about in a second, and within the contract, identifying interventions, continuously monitoring and reporting on school performance annually and collecting that body of evidence so that by the end of the charter term, this board will have all the information at its disposal to be able to make an informed decision on renewal or non-renewal or revocation or what that might look like throughout the process. And so there's going to be a lot of monitoring and intervention and oversight tools that we will develop and talk about throughout the course of the charter term. But one of the foundational pieces of that is the performance framework. And so on the next slide, we are sort of actively building that and in the process of putting together Voorhees performance framework right now. And that will be the foundation of the performance monitoring and accountability that this board will hold C.R. Neal and any approved charter school to. And what is included in the performance framework is the full list of indicators and measures that you will look at as a board to determine if a school is delivering on its mission and meeting the standard of what this board sets for successful schools and delivering on their mission and successfully like educating students and being pillars of the community. And so there's much more to come on this, and there's going to be there's a ton of work that has gone into this. There's going to be a ton of work that we will do to support the board in implementing this. But really, there's sort of three key questions at the foundation of our performance framework, and it falls into kind of the three overarching categories, and those are in academics, is the school academically successful and delivering on its mission? And so we will have indicators and measures that allow the institute to collect all the evidence and then bring that to the board for the board to review and determine if the school is doing that. For finance, is the school fiscally viable and sustainable both in the short term and in the long term? And then organizationally, is the organization effective, compliant, and well run? And as I mentioned, there's several indicators and metrics that will support that and give the board evidence. But again, the board has some very important duties. One is approving high quality schools, and another is holding those schools accountable. So this board will be responsible for making the decisions on renewal or non-renewal, when to revoke a school's charter, if a school is needing to be closed, right? All of those decisions will be grounded in the performance framework as the foundation of performance expectations for a school. And that will inform your ability to hold schools accountable to their performance. And so I just wanted to touch on that. Again, there's a lot more of that to come. But again, we are stepping into now the ongoing oversight and monitoring and really like the bulk of the work that goes into overseeing charter schools. And so I'm happy to answer. We're going to save questions for the end, but I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Smalley to talk a little bit more about sort of your responsibility as an LEA in South Carolina and how that runs parallel to some of this pre-opening work that I've discussed.
Thanks, Jane. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you and just to really be getting into the real work here of getting ready for a school opening next school year. So Jay just walked through the ready to open process from the school side. So really, what C.R. Neal must demonstrate before opening and the board's role in that. My section is going to focus on the parallel responsibility that Voorhees has to build the LEA systems around the school. To essentially, LEA, it's an acronym. We're a district, and how do we build that district capacity so we are also ready? So Jay used the terms like, what does the school have to have in place? And so kind of two key questions that we're talking about here is, what does the school have to have in place? What do we have to have in place? And what's the board's role in determining those answers? So, readiness is not just a school responsibility. Voorhees has to be ready to submit, support, monitor, and escalate as the LEA. And as Dr. Stevenson mentioned earlier, a few of these proof points are already in place. So we've got monthly state check-ins underway. We had a great kickoff meeting with our colleagues there, and we've got another one coming up here in a couple weeks that we're going to prep for. The school identification number has been created. That's something that we as the authorizer have to initiate and kind of complete those forms for the school to establish that. The portal access has now been granted to Voorhees. I'm jumping on a call right after this with Office of School Facilities and the school to kind of do a walkthrough on that. And we're beginning this capacity model for the year ahead. And this capacity model is essentially, what are the pieces we need to put together to know we've got the capacity to do this as a district? And we should be really clear today, Voorhees can fulfill its LEA responsibilities. And that's going to require, not just this lean founding structure that's not going to be able to absorb every district style function on its own. So this year, we really need to identify what belongs internally, what can be supported through partners or consultants, and what needs to come to the board as a resource or decision point. So LEA, what does this mean in practice? I mean, what does it look like? Let's just get into these details for a couple minutes here. And Act 123 is super instructive. It really clarifies not just kind of new requirements around being an authorizer, but that we are the local education agency for our charter schools. That makes us a little bit different from how this is structured around the country. And so we need to really dive into that and make sure that we're ready. And that means we're going to stand up the district style functions that you see here. So finance and state reporting, power school and data systems, special education oversight, facilities coordination, federal programs, and board reporting and board governance. All of those need to be in alignment with how districts operate in the state. This doesn't mean that Voorhees is going to manage the school and future schools day to day. The school is still going to operate with charter autonomy. They're going to make their, once you get behind that front door of that school on that campus, those decisions about its people and its program, those are made by the school. We have to make sure that we have enough internal capacity, external support, and protocols to meet our LEA responsibilities, kind of wrapping around that school as a district. And for the board, the question's not whether we've got every operational detail solved right now, but it's more, are we building the right systems? How are we doing that at the right time and with the right people, and also kind of risk visibility? So always anticipating, hey, what do we have to put more attention to and move forward? What can we kind of pause on? So this timeline, when we talk about these two things happening, the school and its readiness, Voorhees as an LEA and its readiness, this timeline kind of shows how this build out runs alongside the school's pre-opening year. So you kind of saw Jay's roadmap. And so in the near term, we're kind of setting our own roadmap alongside this and integrated with it. So we're setting this foundation, state coordination, the LEA roadmap, the kickoff with CR Neal next month, and kind of this early portal access and SIDN work that Dr. Stevenson mentioned. And then in the fall, we're going to kind of shift this focus to building the actual system. So what are the monitoring routines that we're going to have, the consultant capacities that we need or internal, the facility work, the SIS work, and practical workflows that are going to support the schools. So we're going to kind of build those out. By the winter and spring, we want to really codify all these frameworks. I mean, have real operational style manuals and SOPs. And we want to make sure we're bringing forward key policies and protocols, especially policies for the board visibility, to make sure that the policy matches practice. And then we want to begin testing these systems out that have to function before opening. And then by the summer of 2027, the board should expect a full kind of formal readiness recommendation grounded in school evidence and also LEA evidence, making sure that we are ready, and a clear assessment of any remaining risks as we enter into opening. And so the board, in thinking about its role, it's not to manage the work month to month, but it is to know what needs to be done and kind of have clear expectations and goals, and then to monitor that progress, to monitor the risks, and approve key items that drive this work forward as they come forward to the board, and ultimately make the readiness determination before opening. So thinking of this shift, like what are the big changes over the next 12 months? We've been planning for this and building foundation, and now it's really shifting into preparedness for operations. And so this slide is kind of meant to clarify the roles. So staff, NACSA, key partners, we're going to build out the roadmap, the tools, the model, checklist, policies, protocols. We're going to build out all those tools and work it operationally. CR Neil is going to make sure that it's tracking on its pre-opening plan. It's going to submit evidence through our pre-opening process, its facilities updates, enrollment and staffing, all of the drivers and levers that we need to see in order to know that that's going to be a successful school that can really live its model with fidelity. The board's role is different. The board should monitor the progress, really celebrate early wins and build on them, assess major risks or delays, budget and staffing implications, so key decisions around where the money goes and investments strategically, any major contract and performance framework items, and the final readiness recommendations. So these are sort of the different buckets. And this is the governance frame. Implementation belongs to staff and partners. Oversight, risk awareness, decision-making, big decision-making across the district, and readiness determination belongs to the board. And when an issue rises to board level, whether it's capacity, budget, policy approval, contracts, we will bring it forward very clearly, and we'll give you enough information, ensure that you can act on that. So you'll see some real threads here when I think of Dr. Stevenson laying out what happens next in Jay. And so really common themes here. And, one of the things we're really trying to push is just clarity around what's being done and what needs to be done. So you'll see some common themes here. And we're also, framing this as you think about a school year. So we're kind of entering into this school fiscal year and a pre-opening year that mirrors, July 1 to June 30th. So we kind of think about this upcoming quarter when you look at this, like what really needs to happen in July and August and September. And we want to maintain this really tight SCDE cadence so that we always stay ahead of our LEA responsibilities, submissions, any deadlines. So we're going to make sure that we're doing that, and we're planning those agendas with our state partners, and we keep that cadence and that collaboration really tight. That's a big priority the next few months. We want to complete this LEA capacity model. So our LEA roadmap, our kind of consultant staffing projections and assumptions and cost estimates, and integrating in pre-opening and the performance framework work and the contract and making sure those pieces fit together. So over the next 90 days, that's really essential that those pieces are clear and complete. The third is we need to keep advancing the near-term, state and school-facing work that we're doing with CR Neil, especially around facilities. It's been mentioned a couple times. I'm going to jump on this call as soon as we wrap today and just keep that portal work going and making sure we're doing everything that we need to do as a district to clear the way for the school and make sure that we're staying on top of things and fulfilling our duties. So that's kind of a day-to-day thing. And I'll give you a slice of life that sort of illustrates this for us when we needed to get into that portal. When you go in the portal as a district, you click on like a field, a little box, and a drop down comes up and it has all the districts. And so we needed to get Voorhees listed in that as a district. And so there was work to be done to submit forms to get Voorhees in the portal. And when I was talking to the school facility folks, they were saying, oh, are you the web access coordinator? Because the web access coordinator in districts does this. And I sort of said like, yes, I'm the web access coordinator. And it's just a slice of life of, in this period with our lean team, we're going to wear multiple hats. We're going to kind of fulfill these duties, but we do need to be doing them. And it's a huge priority for us. We want to keep that going the next 90 days. Last couple items, we want to make sure we're aligning our calendar with the school's calendar. And so the build out of these different work streams stays connected. So really kind of looking at our schedule and looking at the board schedule and our operational schedule and the schools and making sure those fit together. And then finally, we always want to make sure we're bringing big decisions to the board as soon as board action is needed. So mapping out next 90 days, what comes to the board, what are those big decision items, and making sure that we're preparing for those and preparing you for them. And the posture I kind of recommend is this: let's stay ahead of the work while not overbuilding too early. And so that's kind of that's where we want to, that's that dance that we're really trying to achieve. And we want to be direct with the board about capacity, really clear about capacity. If we see gaps in, finance, data, special education, federal programs, any key LEA function, those should be elevated early to the board, not as, mistake or failure, but just the normal work of building out a responsible and robust LEA model before students arrive. So we just need to always be doing that, having open, candid discussions about where we are and if there's anything that we need to shift. So the board should expect regular progress reporting, timely risk elevation, targeted capacity investments, and very clear decision points. Staff will manage the build out. The board will ensure all the systems are in place, risks are visible, and final readiness decision is based on evidence. So I know that's a lot. It's kind of been the three of us in a row here. We would be happy to just pull up out of the discussion or the presentation and have a discussion, hear your questions.
Are there questions, board members? So before questions start flowing, first of all, thank you, Dr. Stevenson, Mr. Smalley, and Mr. Whalen. Again, we are excited about this time about this juncture with the Institute. We're excited to have our first school, and we absolutely want to represent them with total excellence and provide all the guidance that they need. So we thank you for providing the guidance that we need to understand how we need to operate as a board to support not only a board, but certainly as the district to support our new school. We're so excited about C.R. Neal, and they will indeed operate successfully because of our partnership. So we are excited about that. I'd also like to bring up the fact that on July 16th, that is the kickoff. Did we say that July 16th with the kickoff? That'll be an exciting time on campus, and I'll have to figure out how to intersect the two boards. The Voorhees University Board of Trustees will be engaging in its summer board retreat. So that will be an amazing time for us to have some FaceTime. So we'll talk about what that might look like. So that's going to be great for the retreat. Board members, I will allow you to hop on in for questions, concerns, etc.
So one, let me just thank all three of you for the information that was provided. There were several key things there that address some of the questions that I had. And there were a couple of terms that were raised that I was happy to hear. Words like risk visibility and capacity investment were a couple of those phrases that I think are critical to us. One of the questions I have is in response to a phrase you used, Mr. Smalling. You mentioned building too fast. And as a new authorizer, I'm thinking about an example, unfortunately, that Limestone University found themselves in, where the institution did not end up doing well. And so as a result, the authorizing role was in jeopardy as well. So what I want to do is make sure that as we're building, that we don't do anything that would impact Voorhees's viability, and I'm in terms of when we say building too fast, using some of the limited resources that the institution has as we're trying to build out the Charter Institute. So I'm trying to figure out how do we mitigate that to make sure that we're building fast enough as an authorizer to make sure that we're able to do the things that we need to do as an LEA, but also make sure that we're protecting the institution that needs to continue to be viable and continue to grow.
Right. I really appreciate that observation. I'll just jump in and say, I think that you're spot on. And I think in terms of, strategy around that, one of the things that we touched on is, bringing back to the board kind of more detail, both in terms of like, what does it look like over the course of the next 12 months? So when do certain functions kick in? So like right now, that we're working with OSF. That's an actual staff, you need staff who can do that. So, and good thing we've got it covered. What do those other pieces look like when you look at finance and federal programs and the SIS and Power School? When do those kick in? And so what we want to do, and this is a great topic for our state colleagues when Dr. Stevenson and I meet with them in a couple of weeks, which is kind of, taking a look at that next 12 months and saying, when do we get access to Power School and SIS? Oh, it's May. Okay. And in May, I'm making this up as, an illustrative example, really knowing like when are the submissions due? And so then back mapping from there, okay, we need someone to be doing that. And who's going to do it? And what's the cost and hourly estimate? And so I've put together a couple of rough plan documents on this with some ballpark estimates. We're going to work on those as a team, refine them a bit, get state input, and then bring that back to the board so that we can really have clear visibility into how do we make sure we've got the capacity? And to your point, you don't want to over invest, over hire, or too many contracts or FTEs where then you've got a bunch of people and the work doesn't need to get done yet. And so we're trying to find that sweet spot between anticipating and also making sure we don't want to leave anything to chance, and we're going to be ready and it's going to be built in time.
Thank you for that. So I hear you saying one thing is you'll align with what is required based on the law and the processes and time, the hiring and some of the resources based on that execution.
That's
So
right.
thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
My follow-up to that question, thank you, Dr. Hightower, is what future decisions are likely to require board action over the next 90 to 180 days, and what information will the board need to make those decisions confidently?
I can jump in on this too, and then if Mr. Whalen, Dr. Stevenson have anything to add. I think that the likely decision points for the board include the charter contract, the performance framework is a big one, and then I would think of different required policies and protocols that serve as kind of prerequisites to the work being done. But definitely the charter contract, performance framework, and then I would say any budget implications that are tied to this LEA build out. So staffing capacity decisions and budget decisions that would kick in, not immediately, but in the near future, as you're thinking about what support might look like, late winter or early spring, late spring. So that would come to the board. The board could also, theoretically need to act on reporting expectations or escalation protocols, anything that's school specific around the school specific conditions that sort of unfold depending on how pre-opening unfolds with the school. So that would be the kind of thing we could bring back to the board, and they might need to make a decision on that. And I think, in order to act confidently, the board needs very clear staff recommendations, needs rationale, cost and capacity implications, any legal or compliance considerations, certainly given the board's role, and then what are the consequences of action or inaction? So that's the kind of information that I feel like the board needs in order to act confidently. And I'd say, the goal is to bring items back to you at the right level. So like not every operational choice in detail, but any decision that we think about that's affecting governance, risk, budget, accountability, capacity, or readiness. And I don't know if my colleagues would add anything to that.
The only thing I would sort of double down on is the policies that'll come forward, right? We're going to have authorizing policies as an institution and LEA policies as a district, and like that is going to set the foundation for how we operate and how Voorhees operates as a district and as an authorizer. And so those policies in themselves will sort of get into some of the nitty-gritty operational details, but the board's decision to adopt and to refine those and to support the staff in that will also help just give the direction for how this board and how the institute operates as an authorizer. And there's going to be a lot of policies that will come over the next, 6 to 12 months.
I do want to say thank you for the presentations, because it did shed light onto a lot of questions, and to give us focus in terms of what's to come. I look forward to the policies and procedures, so that will also help us to map out and envision some things that are forthcoming. You talked about risks as we're going forth. But what would that look like if risk or anything needs to be escalated to the board, how would you handle those kinds of situations? What should we do or look forward to?
Yeah, I would say with the school, the highest risk areas are facilities and approvals. I mean, I just can't tell you how many times I've worked with schools or been on the school side and everything else is tracking. And then there's a fire sprinkler mitigation that you find out about, 3 months before school opening, and it's a $300,000 estimate to, I just so facilities is so important. So that is a high risk area. I think that really staying on top of enrollment because enrollment drives budgets and understanding what real enrollment is. Enrollment numbers that you can get from a pre-enrollment form, intent to enroll or an interest form is very different from hard registrations. And so that's another one where I think that we as an authorizer need to have our system set up in place. What's the cadence of monitoring that? How do we make sure it's verified? And, making sure that schools by the spring have numbers and we're benchmarking those. And so that's a risk area because it then really can impact like, does the school have a robust enough budget? Can they pull this off? And so to me, those are the ones that are really, really important. I think special populations readiness and data and state reporting are also really key. And so those are kind of the highest risk areas that I think from a monitoring standpoint, we should be looking at. Um, Escalation approach and like how this comes to the board, to me, it should be really simple and clear. And that's that the staff has a system through which, and then it is monitoring monthly everything that's happening. So we've got these touch points and a tight cadence that we can set up with CR Neal when we meet with them next month and really walk through what they're going to do, what we're going to do. That risks can be categorized for you by severity. So like it's tiers of risk. And we kind of know how to do that and bring it to you. And any risk that has a timeline, budget, compliance, student service kind of implication gets elevated through regular reports, or if needed, a board action item, or even a special called meeting where, hey, this is a really timely issue and we need to bring it to you. So that'd be my recommendation there. I'm not sure what others might add.
I wouldn't add really anything to that besides like the pre-opening checklist and benchmarks do like they are time bound in a lot of ways, and so job of the staff will be to elevate to those to the board when necessary and possible, so that ideally the goal is that you would never get to April, May, or June and be surprised by a school that is not ready or not on track to open. Those quarterly benchmarks and how we sort of structure the timing around board meetings is our ability to elevate, particularly some of the risks that Elliot mentioned, so that you are aware of those sort of moving into, and additional progress that either needs to be made up or where a school is, that it's never going to be a surprise come June or July that a school is not ready to open.
Thank you.
So additional question, based on all of the amount of work that we're responsible for, is there a recommendation or do you recommend that do we have to have other persons, like hire other persons to help assist with some of this work?
Yes, that's gonna need to happen. Doesn't have to happen right now, but this is one of the things that we want to forecast and bring back those kind of estimates and those which quarter, when we look ahead at the next, the 4 quarters of this year, in which quarter might you bring on a federal programs consultant, for example, Dr. Hill, who's going to help with maybe there's a federal programs plan that we need to submit or we need to review a school plan, and there has to be a district rep that does that. And just determining, do we have that existing capacity at Voorhees? Do we have that existing capacity with our current team of consultants, Dr. Stevenson, and what needs to be, handled by a new consultant? And then thinking about once the school is up and running, this will still be pretty small scale year one because you've got one school. That school is opening up with an estimated 260 students, 6th grade and 9th grade. And so in terms of, state revenue, there's not a significant amount of state revenue coming in on a 2% authorizer fee for a while. And so you kind of build up to that. And that's one reason why just making really smart strategic decisions about expenditures and what we're investing in is so important in the early years. So staying kind of lean and nimble and recognizing, oh, we're probably going to need a Power School SIS specialist who in a very limited way, kind of surgically can do our reports and is ready to do that. Similar with the budget, the check registers, the money that needs to flow between the state and the school. We as a district need to be that conduit. And so there are people out there, retired, others who do consulting in South Carolina. And so I've started to form a list and I've begun talking to people and seeing who's available. We'll bring that back to the board, but we will have to add some specialized expertise in a smart way over the course of this pre-opening year in order to do that work and then just have our team stood up and ready as soon as day one occurs next year.
And of course, legal counsel that focuses on charter school and education law. That's one of the needed things and most important things for us as well.
Yeah. And I heard you talk about the enrollment as you look at that, getting closer to opening. Do we get a chance to also look at who will be involved in the hiring practices that are work within the schools with the students? Because that's key when you start talking about success for the end of that particular first year.
Yes, ma'am. When we think about, the pre-opening conditions and what are the kind of tasks and subtasks and like actual requirements that, we want to set forward for the school as an authorizer, one of them is around staffing. And so, what rises to the authorizer level is tracking, when leadership is hired, when teachers are hired, what percentage, of staffing is complete relative to the school goal. And so that gives us visibility into how that's going. The very specific decisions and the methods through which the school does its hiring, that's really in charter world, that is a school-based decision. However, we want to make sure that, everything that we do in the school does is in compliance with Act 123. It's legally sound. And so we'll certainly have visibility into all of that. And the things that will really kind of ladder up for us to be tracking will be, percentage completion rates. And is the staff rounding out? Is it in alignment with their plan? And their plan goes into very explicit detail, Sierra Neal Academy, a rooted school, around their hiring practices, their job descriptions, and so we actually have that detail, very granular detail right now that we could look at. And so it's totally part of our, responsibility to make sure that they are implementing according to that plan.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, board members, for those really very good questions and comments. Thank you so much for that engagement. Are there any other questions? I certainly don't want to for us to leave without all questions answered and all hearts and minds being satisfied. So seeing none at this time, I will note for the record that our next meeting is scheduled for July 16th, 2026. That's July 16th, 2026 at 10 a.m. On the campus of Voorhees University in the Lawrence Memorial Auditorium at Massachusetts Hall at 10 a.m. And of course, incorporated with our meeting, and on that day, we will do the walkthrough and the official kickoff of our first school, C.R. Neal Academy. So we are certainly excited, very excited about that. So I want to thank everyone again, our board members, our staff, and everyone who participated in today's meeting. Thank you to those who have participated or viewed our meeting remotely. Let us continue to build a legacy of excellence and integrity in public education. Colleagues, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the June 18th, 2026 board meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Sojourner, seconded by Dr. Green. Dr. Green, what say you?
Approved.
Dr. Hightower Mitchell?
Approved.
Dr. Sojourner?
Approved.
Dr. Hill?
Approved.
Vice President O'Berry?
Approved.
The motion to adjourn passes. This concludes our meeting. Thank you all. Have a tremendous day, a blessed day. And again, in all things, we give thanks. To God be the glory. Take good care.